When Art asked me to speak today about practicing generosity and talking about an example of generosity that stood out and made an impression on me, I was at first hesitant. What did he really mean by the word generosity? Everywhere I look, I see people doing good deeds, helping others, whether it be volunteering, graciously giving money, or just listening to what someone has to say. I decided to look up the word and see what it means, and according to the Word Book Dictionary, there are several definitions. First, it's the quality of being generous, a willingness to share with others in unselfishness. Second is a nobleness of heart and mind, a willingness to forgive, and an absence of meanness. Third, a generous act and generous behavior. When I thought back to our conversation, I remember Art saying to talk about an example of practicing generosity and the church. Generosity is one of the words I have always used when I describe Saugatuck Church and its congregation. It is one of the pillars for which this church stands. Examples include the numerous missions and programs supported by the church, the community feasts, angel tree gifts, Saugatuck River cleanup, just to name a few. In addition, the members of the church not only generously donate financially to sustain the church and its programs, but give of themselves volunteering numerous hours from serving on boards and committees to serving food at the Thanksgiving feast. There are so many acts from which to choose. One example came quickly to mind that perfectly fit all aspects of the dictionary's definition of the word. It occurred many years ago, but this act of generosity affected many people and in many different ways, and its impact is still being felt today. Many of you know and remember Ted Hoskins, who was called to serve Saugatuck Church in 1971. Ted is a remarkable and caring individual who is also a social activist, which in a town like Westport, particularly in the late 60s and early 70s, could be a good and a bad thing. What he did to make such an impression was to allow a group of homeless men to live in the church. This act of generosity caused quite a stir. Many applauded and others were horrified. While many thought the offering of shelter was done in the Spirit of Christ and met a real need, others had concerns and doubts which threatened to divide the congregation. Numerous objections were raised. The church is not a suitable place to house these young men. They were causing wear and tear in the building, which a congregation would then have to pay to repair. The housing and fire codes do not permit this. There were young children in the building. Would they be safe? Since the community could or would not assist these young men, Ted believed that it was the responsibility of the church to take action and to serve as a sanctuary for them. This brings to mind the sanctuaries that a number of churches have become today for undocumented immigrants who are being sheltered to prevent them from being deported and separated from their families. Ted clearly stated his position at an annual church meeting when he said, "The church does not exist to serve itself, but to serve God as we know him in Jesus Christ." There was much heated debate here within the church and within the community. Even the press reported on this, and the Wall Street Journal once wrote an article about Ted and his passion for justice. Living in the church was not a long-term option for these men. It did not have the facilities such as showers, and there were violations of the fire codes which did present real potential risks. However, this one act of generosity, this noble gesture did, was to highlight and continue the discussion as to how we as a community would deal with the issue of homelessness. Eventually, this helped lead to the establishment of the Interfaith Housing Association, now known as Homes for Hope, and a permanent shelter now called the Gillespie Center. From this experience, I realized that every well-intentioned deed is viewed by all as being benevolent. From this experience, I realized that not every well-intentioned deed is viewed by all as being benevolent or good, and sometimes an act of generosity also requires an act of courage. In addition, a single act of generosity can have a ripple effect where one basic act of benevolence can lead to others. Our acts of generosity are a reflection of how we view ourselves and show our belief in each other and in God. I will never forget Ted and his generous spirit and selflessness. This spirit of doing good and what is right, which continues from even before Ted's tenure to today, is what I so admire about Saugatuck Church and its members. Thank you.